Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to knit moss stitch. Moss stitch is a really lovely versatile stitch. It is reversible, so it looks exactly the same on the front as it does on the back. It's an easy 4-row repeat, and if you're someone who prefers written instructions, then I have left written instructions on my blog for you, and I'll pop a link to those in the description. But without further ado, grab your needles, grab some yarn, and I'll show you how to knit this stitch. To start moss stitch, you want to cast on an odd number of stitches. Casting on an odd number of stitches means that your project will be symmetrical at either side because the stitches at either end will be the same. If you use an even number of stitches, that isn't the case. So I'm going to make a small sample today, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cast on 35 stitches. I'm going to use the long tail cast on method, but you can use whatever you like. Once you've cast on the amount of stitches that you want to turn your work, and we're going to start knitting our moss stitch. Moss stitch is a 4-row repeat, so you repeat the same 4 rows over and over, and that's what develops your stitch pattern. It's worked in a really similar way to seed stitch, but with a few tweaks to make that moss stitch pattern that's so distinctive to this stitch. So we're going to start with a knit one and then a purl one. And just like seed stitch, it's that same knit one, purl one repeat all the way along for your first row until you have 1 stitch left. The last stitch in your row should be the same as your first stitch because we're working an odd number of stitches. So we started row 1 with a knit one, so we should end row 1 with a knit one as well. Turn your work. Row 2 and 3 are the same. So you want to start this time with a purl one, and then knit one, and you want to work that purl one, knit one all the way across until the last stitch, which should be a purl one because we started with a purl, and on our odd number of stitches we should end with a purl. Last stitch now, and that one of course is a purl one. Row 3 is the same as row 2, so you want to again work purl one, knit one all the way across, ending on one final purl one. One final purl one, and that finishes row 3 of our 4-row repeat. Row 4 is a repeat of row 1, so you want to go back to the knit one, purl one, repeat, ending on one final knit one. So knit one, purl one all the way across, and end on one final knit one. So that's our 4-row repeat. For those of you that feel confident, you can now go away and knit as much as you want, and you can skip ahead to the cast off chapter, and I will show you how you cast off your project to maintain your stitch pattern at the end. But for those of you that are a little less confident, I'm going to go over these 4 rows again for you one more time. So turn our work, and row 1 of the 4-row repeat is knit 1, purl 1 all the way across and finish on a knit 1. Row 2 is purl 1, knit 1 all the way along, finishing on one final purl 1. Row 3 is the same as row 2, so you want to purl 1, knit 1 all the way across, finishing on a purl 1. And row 4, the final row of our 4-row repeat, is the same as row 1, so you want to work a knit 1, purl 1 all the way across, finishing on a knit 1, obviously because we have an odd number of stitches. I've gone away and added some more rows onto this work, and you can see the stitch pattern's really quite nicely defined now. I've just finished a row 3, and what you want to do when you cast off is you want to cast off on a row 4, because that means not only will your project be symmetrical at the sides, but it will also be symmetrical top and bottom. If you're not worried about it being symmetrical top and bottom, you can cast off whenever you like, but if you are like me and I like symmetry in my work, then casting off on a row 4 will mean that your work is nice and symmetrical all the way around. So we cast off using the same stitch pattern that we've been knitting with for the whole project. So in this case, a row 4 starts with a knit 1 and then a purl 1. And then when we're casting off, you want to knit the first 2 stitches, then lift the first stitch, pop it off the needle and over the second stitch. This stitch was a purl, so the next one is a knit. So we knit 1 more, lift the first stitch over the stitch we've just worked and off our needles. When you're casting off, you should never have more than 2 stitches on your right hand needle. Next stitch is a purl, so we purl and then lift over, and you want to work your knit 1, purl 1 repeat all the way along and casting off as you go. When you've cast off all the way along and you just have the one final loop left on your needles, you can break your yarn and then you just pull that through, and that is your work cast off nice and neatly. You can then go ahead and sew in your ends, and that is your project done. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have, I'd love it if you'd give me a thumbs up, and I will see you again for another tutorial soon. Bye!